So on to segment number 3, and the third factor that I want to discuss is the reduced testing time and the exam length. Now, even though there were several changes that took place at different times between 2021 and currently, I decided to split into two because that gives us the situation that occurred before 2021, meaning before the pandemic hit, and currently. And currently, I mean by looking at what is stated on the CFA Institute website. So, before 2021, a CFA exam lasted 6 hours. All three levels lasted 6 hours. So 3 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon. Whereas currently, only the CFA level 1 exam has a duration, has a length of 4 hours and 30 minutes in total, so 2 hours and a quarter per session. And you can see that now you have 60 less questions comparison to what happened before for level 2. And to make it consistent in terms of the amount of time that you have for each question, they reduce the time allotted for the CFA level 2 exam currently. So you have 22 item sets, 4 questions each, so that makes it 88 questions, and you have now 2 hours and 12 per session with a grand total of 4 hours and 24 minutes. And now you have a mix of essay questions and item sets for level 3, and you have this mix, and you have 6 essay sets and 5 item sets, or vice versa per session. Whereas before you had 8 to 12 essay sets, which with 3 to 4 questions each in the morning. And keep in mind, this, even though this says that this was the case before 2021, I set for the level 3 exam in May 2022, and this was still the format in place at that time. So in the morning you have the essay portion of the exam, all essay questions, 8 to 12 sets with 3 or 4 questions each in the morning, and then you have 10 item sets with 6 questions each in the afternoon. And the format in the afternoon of the level 3 is exactly the same as either session of the level 2 exam back then. So because back then level 2 were 20 item sets, 6 questions each, so 120 questions, and so split into 60 in the morning, 60 in the afternoon, and basically you have the same format for the afternoon of level 3. And as you can see, for level 2 you have 32 less questions now that you had back then. And so now because of the mix between essay sets and item sets that you can have a level 3, you cannot tell much of what is exactly the difference in terms of the number of the questions, because that depends on the amount of essay sets and the item sets that you get on each exam, so that varies. So you cannot say clearly what is the difference in terms of the number of questions compared to what had happened before. Now, this translates into what? Basically, these adjustments that were made for the current format of the exams, basically you get the same amount of time, all right, per question for level 1 and for level 2. For level 3 is a little bit different because the format by itself changed, all right. Before you had the essay portion in the morning, and the afternoon you had the item sets again, which are multiple choice. Now currently, because you have the mix between essay questions and multiple choice questions both in the morning and the afternoon, you cannot tell what time of what is the time that you have, average time you have per question, because it depends on the essay questions you get and the multiple choice questions that you get. So it is more difficult to pinpoint the difference to what happened before, all right, but between level 1 and level 2 it is consistent. Basically you get less questions and you get the same proportionally a smaller amount of time to complete the exam. Now, given all of this, for me, there are several key conclusions or several key insights that needed to be underlined, which is why this happens change. Basically, the CFA Institute claims that with less questions, we can still can collect enough information to check or to determine whether the candidate is able or is qualified or knows enough to pass the exam. And so the additional questions that you have simply confirmed that assessment that you made with less questions. And only in very corner case situations, a candidate who is qualified to pass with a reduced number of questions would not be qualified to pass with a larger amount of questions. It is a fair assessment. I believe this is the case because, of course, if you the further you get with the number of questions, for example, for level 1, as you can see, you get 60 less questions, all right, so 240, 180. Of course, the assessment or the outcome of the assessment is more likely to remain the same if the 60 question difference remains, but the higher are the numbers. For example, if we have an exam with 1,000 questions in the old format and the new format one with 940 questions, you still get the 60 question difference, but because there are so much more questions, the likelihood that those added 60 questions are irrelevant for the outcome, it's even more of the case. But if you have, for example, an exam with 10 questions and another one with 70 questions, those 60 questions more are more likely to have a change in the outcome. You see, so the bigger the number of questions, the more irrelevant are the more questions you get overall, it is more likely that the initial assessment with less questions will remain the same. This is the conclusion, and it makes perfect sense. However, even if this is true, I think we can all agree that having to answer 60 more questions for level 1 or 32 more questions for level 2, this covers always, you are able to cover a larger range of topics and aspects of the curriculum that you cannot do with lesser questions. All right, so even so the outcome will remain the same. You have to demonstrate that you covered and you know all the entire curriculum, and you can better assess that with more questions. All right, I think this is something that we can all agree, because it is obvious, it makes perfect sense. And this is what it's more, I think, with more on the surface, what is more clear for everyone to see. Now, having done both formats, all right, the in level 1, the longer format of the exam, and for level 2 and level 3 the shorter format, I can tell that aside all the conditions for the exam and all that I explained before, and the fact that level 1 is an easier exam than the other ones, I think that being forced to remain sharp and focused for 3 hours straight twice is much more demanding on the mental state of candidates than simply sitting for an exam for 2.25 hours twice. And not only that, I think that your mental sharpness, because it deteriorates as time comes by, those additional 45 minutes per session will tend to have a more material drop in terms of mental sharpness. And I think that at the time in which you are supposed to review the answers, you are supposed to see if you or at least not only review the questions but also to go back and see if you can answer the questions that you left behind. At this particular moment, this is when your mental acuity is at the lowest because you are much more tired. And I think being able to do this and sit for an exam for 3 hours straight twice, I think even though it's only 45 minutes, all right, but it makes a very, very, very large difference. And it's much, much more demanding for sure. And when it comes to level 3, uh, even though this is even less obvious, the essay format, because it's the more difficult to tackle, I know that, and this is something that I discussed with other charter holders and even with level 3 candidates before, the fact that the essay format is by far much more difficult to tackle than multiple choice, because it's either black or white. If you know the answer, you will be able to write it. If you have a somewhat vague idea of what is the correct answer, you will not be able to answer the question, the essay question. Whereas if you have a vague idea, you will be able still to get to the right answer in the multiple choice because you have the options in front of you, and by elimination by process of elimination, you can get to the right answer for the most part. But since the essay format is much more difficult to tackle, I know that previously, in the previous format, level 3 candidates were much more likely to have a bad performance in the morning session where all the essay questions were asked. And because they felt, oh, this went so bad, I need to make up so much ground, I need to get probably everything right in the afternoon session. How am I going to be able to do it? And so their morale and their mental basically their morale takes a knock, and so it makes it much more demoralizing and being unable to make up for it in the afternoon session. And I know some cases that in which this happened, the person was much more comfortable in the afternoon session, but because they were mentally not in the right place after having gone through such a bad morning session, they were not able to get it right in the afternoon session, and they failed the exam. Whereas now, if you have a mix of essay questions and multiple choice questions, it is easier for candidates to not be demoralized by going through a bad patch in the essay questions, because they are able to still get it right in the multiple choice, and you have it equally on the morning and the afternoon session. So this is of course a less obvious aspect, but I think it's also relevant because you can only be aware of this with experience, all right, and having gone through some mock exams, some having talked with many candidates and even charter holders. This is something that is less obvious for the people from the outside looking in, but it's still a factor. And so, for all intents and purposes, having said all of this, I think that this is another reason why current candidates have an easier CFA exam experience than in pre 2021. I think all these factors make it pretty clear that now the exam has gone easier. The three exams have gone easier to go through, basically.